AI just replaced a job that would have paid more than $300,000, but is it going to work? We'll discuss this story and many others on this week's episode of This Week in Corporate BS, presented by me, Professor Corporate. So apparently there's this guy named Joaquin who is now the new head of recruiting at OpenAI, which is interesting for a bunch of reasons, but primarily because this guy has no recruiting experience, at least none that I can see. And if you look at his experience, you can see that he's been in this recruiting role for literally a month. Before then, it says he was an intern. Obviously, that's not a real title, but if you scroll down, the main point that you need to see is that he has been in highly technical roles, whether that's at LinkedIn or at Meta. Clearly, he is, experienced, but just not in recruiting. Like, he's done engineering and machine learning and all of these other highly technical roles. And that's where this gets a little weird. And in his post, this guy talks about how recruiting has never been more important. So why not make it the first job that you try to replace with your AI company, right? And you can tell that this is the direction he's going is because if you read a little bit ahead, he literally talks about how their plan is to see how AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which if you're not familiar is supposed to be the super intelligence next level of AI that will really start to change the way in which we live and work and all those things. But in his post, he is talking about seeing how that can 10x or 100x productivity in the workplace with recruiting and hiring. And before I explain why I think AI is going to fail miserably at replacing these jobs, at least for now, can we just pause and ask ourselves, why is it that corporate America is so obsessed with trying to 10x or 100x things? Like, we are in this endless pursuit of trying to maximize profits at all costs. Can we change the conversation of figuring out how we could 10x the quality of life for employees? Can we talk about 10xing employees' pays versus the senior leadership exec team? And I hate to sound pessimistic, but it really does feel like we are building ourselves out of our own future, because why is any corporation that is obsessed with maximizing profits going to care about ensuring that you are paid competitively when they have all of these AI tools at their disposal that will maximize their wallets? Anyway, the reason I'm actually not as concerned right now anyway is because if you keep reading this guy's post, he literally finishes it by linking to a Google form for people to apply to their jobs. And the reason this is so funny to me is because this form is exactly what somebody would do that has never worked in recruiting. Because this still exists, which is their actual career page, which all of the recruiters in the company are using. And if you haven't worked in recruiting, let me just tell you, having two different applicant tracking systems, especially one that's a Google form, is a nightmare for them to manage. So I guess we're looking pretty safe for now. And moving right along to our next BS story of the week, apparently Reddit has just sued the AI company Anthropic. And apparently it's because Anthropic has been illegally scraping millions of user comments to train its Claude chatbot. The social media platform says Anthropic tried to access Reddit data over 100,000 times since July of 2024. And the reason this is so serious is because apparently other companies like Google and OpenAI pay Reddit for this and have paid almost $60 million a year for this information. Now, is it kind of messed up for Anthropic to just be stealing from Reddit? Maybe, but we need to get really clear on something. Reddit is not being stolen from. We are being stolen from because all of the things that they're talking about is our data. And look, I'm not stupid. I know there's absolutely nothing that we can do about this. I just think that it's so ironic that companies like this that are having their own data from us being taken away from them are getting so angry and defensive and suing each other over it, because at the end of the day, we are not seeing a dime from any of this. So good luck to Reddit. And I don't know, as much as I don't care about this, it is going to be interesting to see what the outcome is and whether or not the legal system agrees that this is not something that companies like Anthropic are allowed to do, because it is going to affect us at the end of the day, because all of the information that's being used to train these AI models come from us. Next up on This Week in Corporate BS is Google is apparently offering employees buyouts instead of calling them what they actually are, which are layoffs. Because, voluntary exit programs sound a lot nicer in articles than layoffs. But anyway, I guess at the end of the day, I can't complain too much about this because they are still offering employees some kind of money before they are let go, which hopefully that remains the trend for the foreseeable future, at least with these bigger companies that can afford to do so. But it is really crazy to me to see that Google is still laying off this many people because they already laid off over 12,000 people in 2023, and this is only adding to that number. But let's go ahead and read this quote because I do think there's a little bit of gaslighting happening here, because according to Google, they said, "I want to be very clear. If you're excited about your work, energized by the opportunity ahead, performing well, I really hope you don't take this. We have ambitious plans and tons to get done." The reason this makes me so nervous when I read this out loud, and if I was an employee there, is because the wording makes it seem like they don't want you to leave, but they're offering you all of this money to do so. How are you supposed to feel safe and secure in your job if you are a part of that batch of employees that was given this option in the first place? Because one would naturally assume that if you are in a role that is important and valued by your company, they wouldn't want you to leave at any costs. And the thing that I hope really doesn't happen is if you end up deciding to stay and not take this money, what happens if you end up getting let go later? Are you not given this money anymore? Because I can totally see a world where they said, hey, we offered you this option before and we're not going to offer it to you now. Let's all hope that that's not what Google is trying to do, because we all know the tech industry is filled with a bunch of copycats, especially when you think back to when Elon Musk started doing all of those layoffs at Twitter and every single tech company followed. If Google is actually paying people to take these voluntary severances, and if people decide to decline those and stay and they end up getting let go later and they don't pay people, that is going to be an extremely dangerous trend that we need to kill right now. I hope the tone of all these articles, while pessimistic, is starting to show you the trend and direction corporations are going, which is all sided for the company and not the employee. These are things that we need to recognize and be aware of so that we can be better prepared. So if you had no idea any of this stuff was going on and you just don't have the time to read up on all these posts on LinkedIn, consider subscribing so that I can keep you up to speed on the latest in corporate BS.